Doesn't that strike against the ethos at the very heart of competitive sports? That the championship title should be within reach of all competitors and not predetermined for only those who hold a particular physical advantage. I realize that I haven't posted a video in months. And no, I'm not dead. I bought a new house, I've been working on renovating my old house, and I've spent the last month caring for a 3-year-old. And recently I've been working on my upcoming video series, Gender for the Rest of Us, where I'll be doing a deep dive into the topics that continuously come up in our political discourse. But today I'm back because this happened, and it just does not seem to want to leave our news cycle. For those who don't follow the Olympics, our story begins with an Algerian boxer named Amani Khalif, I'm really not sure how to pronounce her name, and the story of a transgender biological male who dominated Olympic boxing. Except that, as it turns out, Khalif is not transgender. Her family has professed that she has always been a girl, and they even presented her Algerian birth records. And in Algeria, you can't just change these records on your birth certificate because that would be illegal. So with that being said, Khalif is just a very muscular woman, right? Well, the story continues. Here, let's go for a walk. In 2023, Khalif, along with another boxer, Lin Yuting, were disqualified from the International Boxing Association for failing a gender test. And we don't know much about this test other than that it was not a testosterone test. But when it comes to gender tests, if you're not testing testosterone, that pretty much means that you're using a blood test to identify whether these individuals have XY or male typical chromosomes. And having XY chromosomes is simply not unbelievable. There are a number of intersex conditions, such as congenital adrenal hyperplasia, that can lead to a baby that appears feminine from a genital inspection, but whose body begins to masculinize at puberty due to higher androgen levels. And just to be clear here, higher levels of androgens, or testosterone, leads to distinct advantage in many physical sporting competitions. In women's competitions, we see this come up fairly regularly, because the reality is that people with these conditions tend to have a very strong advantage when it comes to sports. But there's one other relevant fact here as well, and that is that the International Boxing Association, who disqualified these boxers, has been estranged from the Olympics for quite a number of years due to Russian corruption within the organization. Now, does that mean that the IBA report about a gender test is a lie? Not necessarily. At the same time, should we take everything that Russia puts forward at face value? Caution is certainly appropriate. As a result of all of this, today there is commentary all over the internet talking about these particular boxers. Are they biological males who medically transitioned and now the International Olympic Committee is covering for them? Are they phenotypically female but hold one or more intersex conditions leading to an increased masculinization? Or are they just XX women who happen to be very muscular and are victims of a Russian disinformation campaign? And look, I don't know. I don't have their records. But for the moment, let's set all of that aside because there's an even more fundamental question underpinning the purpose of professional sporting competitions at all. See, all of the hype and all of the strong opinions here centralize around one thing, and that is fairness in sporting competitions. Because intuitively, we all know that it just isn't fair if a certain class of competitor can automatically win because of a built-in physiological advantage. We do know that, right? Whether we are discussing transgender women athletes or women who have high testosterone for literally any reason at all, that point still remains. Because males and females and their associated hormones are physiologically different. The advantage that testosterone provides can vary depending on the sport, and boxing is certainly one where the masculinizing effects of testosterone can have a profound effect. And with such an advantage, it probably shouldn't surprise us that the two competitors accused of being insufficiently female, Khalif and Yuting, are the very competitors who are now lined up to compete for the gold medal in tomorrow night's Olympic competition. Personally, I am very concerned about a future that's quickly becoming a reality, where competitive women's sports are winnable only by individuals with a particular genetic makeup or physiological condition. Doesn't that strike against the ethos at the very heart of competitive sports? That the championship title should be within reach of all competitors and not predetermined for only those who hold a particular physical advantage. Yes, that is what sporting competitions are supposed to be about, right? An unadulterated competition where any one of us can succeed as long as we try hard enough, focus enough, and end up achieving a wondrous feat. Except it's a lie. It's always been a tall tale because every athletic champion receives benefit conferred by their particular biology. See, at the amateur level, athletes can succeed simply because they worked harder and honed their skills better than other amateur athletes. But at the professional level, every competitor is best of class. They all have fantastic training and they all have fantastic diets and fantastic skills and talents. So when a race begins and one champion inevitably rises to the top, there's always going to be a physiological reason why that individual won. Perhaps the winner is just a little bit taller than their competitor. Perhaps their metabolism enabled them to reduce their body fat just a tad bit more. Or maybe their physiology allowed them to put on just a little bit more muscle where it really mattered for their particular sport. It's these small physiological differences that separate champion from second place in the highest levels of competition. These small, almost insignificant physical differences make all the difference when you pair the best against the best. Because when the best are all competing together, the competition is going to be very, very close. Look at these results for the men's 100-meter sprint earlier this week. The difference between first place and 8th place is just over a tenth of a second. Why did Lyles win over Thompson or Curley? I don't know the distinct advantage that these particular runners held over one another. But while we're on the topic of distinct physiological advantage, do you notice any commonality between these all-star runners? The winners of this year's men's 100-meter sprint are all of West African descent. This was true last Olympics as well. In fact, this has been true for pretty much as long as black men have had access to international competition and training. There are competing theories on why it is that West African men are better at sprinting than others, but it's undeniable that they certainly are better. And that means that if you have aspirations to beat the men's 100-meter sprint, you had better be a black man, or else you are simply not going to break this record. This has long been another controversial topic in professional sports. So should this concern us? Is this fair? And that answer hinges on collectively what we want professional sports to be. If our objective is simply to find the fastest runner or the best performing boxer, regardless of the underpinnings of their success, then no, I don't think we should care at all. But while sports are about finding and celebrating outstanding human talent, that's not all that competitive sports are about. They're also about the art of competition itself and the dedication and devotion required to push one's skills and to drive one to new accomplishments. And whether we want to admit it or not, they're also about entertainment. And entertainment relies on a certain element of unpredictability, on the reality show that these are real people with real dreams who are competing together and that any of them might take the prize. For professional sports to be meaningful, both for the competitors but also for the audience, they need to be structured in a way that ensures some element of diverse outcomes with who can succeed in the competition. It's entirely understandable why so many female competitors have become enraged that they have no chance of winning in competition because someone else, whether they're biologically male or have high testosterone for other reasons, is all but guaranteed to beat them. But as always, there are two sides here and we should thoughtfully consider both of them. Imagine for a moment that you're a Khalif, that you are born and raised as that little girl in Algeria. You have external female genitalia, and you are raised as a girl from the moment that you're born. And you identify fully as the girl that you appear to be to not just yourself, but everybody else around you. You develop an interest in the sport of boxing, and you dedicate your life and passion to getting better and better. You train your whole life, first through the amateur ranks, and then through blood, sweat, and tears, you ultimately become the best in your class. And then late in the game, perhaps only after participating in a gender test in a professional competition, you learn that you will never again be allowed to compete in your passion and life's focus, because a completely natural physiological development that has conferred your particular athletic advantage simply is disqualifying based on the rules that we've set up for your sport. This matter is hard, it really is. And what bothers me to no end is the people in this conversation who insist that this isn't hard, that it's all about trans women having everything they want in sports, or it's all about excluding them as though their feelings and aspirations don't matter at all either. Because I'll remind you that two groups of people can both matter at the same time. For the sake of fair competition, we need to have boundaries on who can compete. But remembering that all champion athletes always have some sort of competitive advantage, we should be very, very careful how we approach this. Women's professional sports exist precisely because, in many cases, the absence of sex segregation would simply mean that females would hold very slim chances of ever reaching the most competitive ranks at all. Compassion ought to lead us to care about female athletes. It's important. And at the same time, I personally hold tremendous compassion for Khalif and Yutang, two women who are under fire for being anti-competitive when, if they do in fact have a disorder of sexual development, this is entirely beyond their control. Are we truly comfortable creating a competitive structure where women with conditions such as theirs simply don't get to compete at all because their bodies naturally made them too good to compete? I can't say that I am, but at the same time, are we fully comfortable allowing them to complete and dominate the competition every time? I'm not comfortable with that either. And look, I do not have all of the answers here. But what isn't getting a lot of attention is that despite all athletes having their own relative competitive advantages that lead to their success, we are hyperfixating only where we can attribute an advantage to a particular identity class, be it race or sex or whatever else. There's a physiological reason why Usain Bolt was so much faster than other men, even other men of African descent. He has a competitive advantage. There's a physiological reason why Michael Phelps was so much faster than other swimmers. He has a competitive advantage. But what is our status quo? To me, it seems to be that when we can't clearly trace a particular competitive advantage, we see fair competition because in our minds, anybody could take the lead. And when somebody inevitably does, we consider it to be their talent and their skill that brought them there. But when we can trace an individual's particular competitive advantage to their class, we get very upset, we call foul, and recently we've just started to get outright mean and dehumanizing. And I truly do get it because it shatters everything we want to see in competitive sports. We want to believe, we truly do, that anybody can rise to greatness with enough practice and dedication. And it's simply antithetical to face the truth, which is that people who win competitions have built-in advantages that let them rise above so many others. But the bounds of competition have to sit somewhere, and sometimes some people are going to be excluded. Recently, we've been having important political conversations about where these bounds should be. My hope is that we can have this conversation while truly reflecting on the impact on all competitors, and not simply disregard the interests of any particular group. I will be discussing the intersection of sports and gender a lot more in my series, Gender for the Rest of Us, including non-professional sports, which brings a whole nother element into the equation.